you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric, this being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I like. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Ray Donovan, as well as the latest episode of American Gothic. But before I get into all that, there's some things I want to go through first. If you want to just, skip ahead to the reviews, look in the description down below. I have the time, so it's like, oh, you want to hear what I have to say about Ray Donovan, you can skip to that. If you want to hear what I have to say about American Gothic, you can go ahead and skip to that. Just some things I want to go over first. But first thing I want to mention, the fact is, like, Ray Donovan isn't a show that I've been consistently watching. It's something I've recently just kind of binged on, because it's actually, I don't know who it is. I'm gonna have to leave an annotation or something shouting them out, but it was someone who suggested to me. They're like, oh, you should check out Ray Donovan. I was like, it's a show I'm interested in, it's just something I kind of never really checked out. I've seen episodes from time to time because I've seen my mom watch it from time to time, so I was like, okay, it looks like an interesting show from the bits and pieces I've seen, so I was interested in watching it. But it wasn't until that it never would have been in the back of my mind to be like, oh, when's the new season start? Oh, it's starting pretty soon, let me just binge on the first 3 seasons to kind of check it out, see if I like it. And I ended up liking it, so thank you to that person, because if it wasn't for them, I most likely wouldn't have checked it out. Like, granted, I've wanted to, it's just them putting it in my head probably set this all in motion. So another thing I wanted to also say is, today I'm putting them together. It's just because I missed the premiere. So it was like I recorded it. It was on my DVR and everything. I just didn't watch it until recently. So I decided, you know what? I'm gonna just wait till now and combine it with American Gothic as well. Next week it won't be like that. I will keep them very separated. Maybe, I don't know. Still haven't. It depends on how long it takes to get that uploaded too. So I'm gonna be doing both of those. So I'm gonna see. What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is I'm gonna see how long it takes to upload that by itself, and if it just kind of takes a long time, then I'll just combine them and make it just one thing that goes up during the week. Like I said, we'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, moving on to the reviews. But starting off with Ray Donovan, a very good episode because it kind of shows you everything in Ray's life is changing. I'm about to call him Doctor. Father Romero took care of him with the whole bullet wound, as well as he kind of got help from a guy named Hector, who basically helped him through all of his issues. Good. I mean, obviously this is a good thing and a bad thing, as we see in this episode. But I mean, let's focus on the good aspects to it. Ray's life is pretty good. Things are going good. Apparently he hasn't drank in 6 months. So with him saying that, it makes me think, okay, it's been about 6 months since that little beginning part, which is kind of right after the season 3 finale. So it's at the very least about 6 months has passed. Things are possibly good with the family. We still haven't gotten a grand look at how life has been over these past 6 months. We see, but he's not drinking as much. He went to one of Bunchy's snap meetings, which is something he's never done in the past. Kind of talking about everything. Father Romero and Hector were there kind of as support for him. So, and it seems like they're setting Hector up to be a very major character this season, because it also seems like he's also a boxer, which I kind of pieced that together from some of the previews I've seen of this season. So I'm like, okay, so that's who he is, isn't he? He's a big time boxer, which we seen plays a big part in all of this. But Ray got Bridget to come to dinner, showing her that, oh, I've changed. It also seems like he's not taking the type of jobs that he usually takes in the past, those type of make problems go away type of jobs, kind of lead to us doing some illegal stuff type of jobs. Because that lady is oh, we're smuggling in some stuff, and he's just yeah, here's your check back. I don't do those type of jobs. She's that's not what I've heard. But he's kind of changing things, trying to make things better, especially because he wants to prove to Bridget, also to himself and to everyone else, but specifically to Bridget, that he's changed, that he's not going to let this type of work ruin his life like it has in the past. He kind of getting swept up in it because he just needed, for him this job was kind of one of his escapes, because he loves his family, but at the same time he worries it's they were just kind of a means of escaping what happened to him when he was a kid. That it had its own that whole thing has its claws in him still, but it seems like he is fighting past that. you know, but he did convince Bridget to come over to dinner, which I was so sure. I'm glad he was able to make it at the end of the episode. I was like, oh crap! With everything unfolding the way it is, I'm like, he's not going to make it at dinner. Everyone's going to be pissed. I was like, oh no, he made it to dinner. Granted, I'm pretty sure everyone could tell he was drunk. I did like the fact that he's tearing up a little bit. He's like, I love you guys, and then Daryl's there like, yeah, we love you too, Ray. And he's Ray kind of go, thanks, Daryl. You know, I was talking about my family, my main family, not my half brother that recently came into my life. I mean, not recently, but still, he's like, you know, I'm talking about my. Thanks, Daryl. You know, he kind of had that look on it, so I thought I like that. Also, you know, we didn't see much of it, but we also know that Bunchy and Teresa have a baby on the way. So I'm glad that kind of worked out, you know, because Bunchy did have his concerns near the end of the season about, you know, being a father, being in this, you know, being who he is after what he's experienced, you know. So I've seen it in the previews, so that kind of spoiled it for me a little bit, but Ray's also going to have to, this season it seems like he's also going to have to deal with the backlash of last season. Well, we've seen a little bit of that storyline stepping up with that detective from last season who's the one that kind of convinced Mickey to turn on the Armenians he was working with. And I'm guessing is like, you know, I mean, we're not guessing, from what I can tell, like, from what happened last season, what the lady said, she's like, you'll never be safe, like, we'll come after you, your family, everyone, your children, like, even if you kill me, this is still happening. So, you know, as from the previews, it's like, you know, he's trying to keep his family safe too. It seems like, I can never remember, I don't know the actor's name. I know him as Nolan from the series Revenge. He popped up, he worked for the person that was trying to hire Ray. Maybe that person has connections to this, because it seemed like from the previews he was beating them up too. I don't know, like I said, you know, you get a lot of stuff out of context, so, but the main thing in this episode is the fact of the matter is Ray had to help Hector. Hector was doing drugs. He was hooking up with some random lady who we'll get to in a second. And then basically things unfolded, and basically he ended up knocking out a cop, like, and tying him up, and basically Ray had to fix the situation. Ray didn't want to, but, you know, basically he has to, because he's indebted to Hector, because Hector fixed, you know, everything in his life, and it's just like, you know, life has been good for him, but it's only because of Hector. So he owes this to Hector. He feels obligated. To me, it's kind of like a repeat of the whole Ezra situation, because like, because Ezra was like a father to him, he did whatever Ezra said. I mean, granted, there was that thing, wasn't her name Kate? She was the journalist. You know, it's because of that they kind of had a split in, like, that's why they fell apart between season 2 and season 3, was because of the whole Kate situation. But more often than not, when he wanted something done, you know, Ray would reluctantly do it. So it's kind of a repeat of that situation. Also, side note, has anything paid off from, like, not, well, I guess you wouldn't know the answers, but I guess I'm wondering if that's going to pop up. The whole, like, situation with him working with the Finneys, like, specifically Finney's daughter, like, you know, remember the whole, like, oh, he gets like 3% of the team or whatever. I guess that deal fell through, or just Ray decided, just screw it, I don't want a part of this, after helping them out the whole situation, basically getting her father arrested. And the last time we saw her was like her staying at Ray's other apartment. That was the last time we saw it, because she was asked, oh, can you stay, and he didn't answer and just left. You know, because I mean, granted, he's pieced his life together in season 4, but, you know, in season 3 he tried. Granted, he slipped up when he had sex with the daughter, which, granted, you know, yeah, he slipped up, you know, but he was trying his best at the time, though. Abby wasn't believing him, like, oh, you haven't, you know, I was like, oh, like, she was still thinking he was having an affair, which she would agree he did. But in his defense, I mean, not defending it real life wise, but I'm saying at least in the show for him, he cheated once last season, so that's a step up, I guess. I mean, no cheating at all would have been better. I mean, he turned her down the first time, but then he caved in the second time. But it's like, you know, season 1, season 2, he cheated about 2 or 3 times. So I at least give him credit to not cheating a lot, which is, you know, probably going to make me look like such an asshole for saying that. But nevertheless, you know, he's a flawed human being. It's like, you kind of, like, I guess because I'm sympathetic, because it's like, I get it. You went through what you went through, and it's kind of messed you up in the head. So it's like, you know, relationships are a little hard for you. It's a little hard for you to open up to people. So you just, sex is kind of his way of just numbing the pain. I mean, granted, we don't even know, like, has affairs happened in the past. We've only seen the ones that happened in the season. We don't, in the show, but we don't know what predate, if there anything that predates the show. But nevertheless, I'm like spinning way off the like reservation. I'm going like far off, like on little tangents. What I want to get back to is the whole Hector situation with the whole cop getting him drunk and setting that whole thing up. I was just like, I felt bad for Ray because, like he said, it hadn't been 6 months, but he started drinking again. Just kind of like Bunchy. Bunchy at the beginning, he was good, but then their dad came back into their lives, and just the whole settlement thing at the beginning, that was just too much for him, so he started drinking. So it's kind of, you see reflections of certain things in the show. And that's one thing I was like, I was like, oh, Ray, man, don't do this. But it's like, he feels indebted to Hector. And you don't even, like, Hector says thank you, but I don't think he really understands what Ray gave up to. He didn't outright say it, but I get the feeling it's going to, like, eventually Hector will say it's like, no, after everything I've done for you, you owe this to me, Ray. Everything I did, I helped you. I basically helped you piece your life together. Hector hasn't said that, but with the way Hector, you know, said things like, oh, you have to help me, like, please, Ray, like, it makes you see it in his eyes, like he wants to say it, he's just not bringing himself to say it. But I know that situation is going to continue to spiral out of control because Ray's already kind of fallen off the path, and it's like, I feel like Hector's just going to drag him further and further off. He had to basically do that whole situation, and that's what I'm talking about. That's something he would have done in the past. And that's, you know, that's kind of him falling back into, you know, old and bad habits. And then there's the whole, basically the job he was getting offered was basically that person sent over the painting that he was staring at before. Now, I don't know how to interpret that. I'm interpreting it as kind of like, hey, I'm giving you this painting. You're taking a job, whether you like it or not. You're taking a job, and she's probably going to force Ray to be in a position where it's like, yeah, you're going to need my help with something. Kind of like the Finney situation with Terry last season. Like, the only reason why he started working with Finney was because he needed his help to deal with the whole Terry and get him out of prison situation. And I'm guessing at the end of it all, like, because that's something that never came back up, is the fact is that Terry isn't, I guess the Aryans aren't after him outside. I guess that was just simply something inside of his head. Maybe. I don't know. We also have the fact is that Abby's got breast cancer, but she hasn't really brought that up to anybody. She hasn't talked to Ray about it, doesn't even confide in Terry about it, which I can only assume Terry's still living there. It never really got brought up. Also, he's trying to work as, I guess he wants to be brought in maybe as a priest or whatever. At first he was trying to be like, he wanted to go on missions to kind of show like, okay, I'm gonna show you what I'm capable of, I can help out. But basically they're like, oh, your faith isn't strong enough. And he's like, really? My faith isn't strong enough? I came back from the freaking dead. So I kind of feel bad for Terry. He's just like, you know, life is good for some people and just kind of not working out for other people. I guess, you know, after everything that went down, Terry kind of found religion because he's just like, you know, he's always been a religious person. We've kind of seen that in this series, but I guess he found it even more after his near-death experience. Also, almost completely forgetting about it, Mickey, we see him a little bit, but he was still scamming people. I was like, okay, here you are working at a casino. I'm like, what are you doing now? It's like, okay, it looks like you're just a bartender. Then I start piecing together, okay, you got a little team to work with. They basically break down rich people's cars, like, you know, make it so their cars don't crash, so they're forced to stay here while their car's being fixed. You get them liquored up, have a girl go up to the room, possibly show them a good time, and then that's rob them, or either just take them up there, let them pass out, then rob them, whatever the case may be. Got found out, got kicked out the casino, took some peyote, saw Bridget. That whole scene was weird, and basically he went to that singer, and it makes me wonder, is he hooking up with her because he's thinking of Claudette, because we haven't seen her for a while. So I'm assuming maybe he's thinking of Claudette, or maybe he just really likes her, but he's like, I'm gonna steal whatever it was he's thinking about stealing, and he's like, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take you and we're gonna run, we're gonna go to Boston, but I'm gonna bring my sons too, because Los Angeles is a cesspool and it's just ruining their lives and whatnot. And then, you know, last time we see him, he's running towards the cops, and then he's passing out. And then the very last scene we see is him waking up, and that detective lady has found him. So very interested to see where that goes, just where everything goes. A very nice premiere. I'm curious to see whether she tries to push Mickey to help her take down the Armenians, because basically there's some girls that died that basically she's saying like, oh, it's because that guy that they were associated with, one of the people that they really wanted to take down, got got away. He was the one that Mickey was supposed to be making a deal with, but they weren't able to catch him because, you know, Ray turned the situation and basically got Mickey out of like being their, you know, the one that, you know, has a wire or whatnot to get the information they need. Granted, they're the ones that kind of screwed up, because the reason why the Armenians even found out about him being a rat was because he saw that cop again. He was like, oh, you were the one that was following Mickey earlier, and you're a cop, so it's okay, Mickey snitched on us. So that was kind of the situation. Like, they helped push that situation along, so it's not just Ray and Mickey's fault, it's just as much as her fault too. But I mean, it's like understandable. It's kind of like you can't really blame her, because it's kind of like, no, Mickey's a piece of crap, so it's okay to sacrifice a piece of crap like him in a sense like that. It's only because we become attached to him, which is kind of like, well, kind of no. Mickey can kind of almost go off and die. Like, he manipulates everyone around him. The only person that's not manipulated by him is Ray. Basically, because everyone else is in love with him, like, oh, like, you know, because just when people start to see that bad side of Mickey, when people stop caring about him, that's when he kind of comes back around. It's like, oh, no, care about me. I'm actually a good person. I'm a fragile old man who just wants to be around his family, stuff like that. So, like I said, very good episode. Very interested to see where everything goes, like, next time. And now moving on to this week's episode of American Gothic, which was once again very interesting. Had that whole scene at the beginning with the mom taking a bath, and then, you know, she's seeing like her husband, seeing Mitchell's shaving utensils and whatnot, and she sees him and start crying. I'm like, part of in the back of my mind, the cynical side of me is like, really? You're crying? You're the one that killed him. Why are you? What do you have to cry about? Then I was like, no, like, it's one of those areas I'm like, I guess I get it. You have your reasons for it. Like, it's not like you wanted to do it. It's the only way you can keep him quiet from telling the truth, whatever it is he wanted to say. Granted, I did like the whole hospital situation, because basically a hospital contacted her and everything, saying like, oh, there was some issues, and she was kind of getting concerned, but then it was like, oh, it was just medical issues, but we would like to do an autopsy on the body. And she's kind of like, okay, I'll try go contact the funeral home to make sure it's not too late. What she do, she turn around and she expedites like the cremation so that they won't have anything, you know, they could pull from, like, you know, to do an autopsy, you know, because they'll realize that foul play was involved, like, you know, because they realized it wasn't just a mechanical error, there was some other parts to it. Also, you know, that screws over Brady, Tessa's husband, because he was trying to get DNA, which it seems like he's not very liked where he is. I guess it's because he's kind of shoehorned in the investigation. Granted, we still don't really know for sure. Like, you know, he wanted to be on a case, but, you know, he kind of, because of his connection to the family, the lady that was running it, I think her name is Cutter, she was basically like, okay, you probably shoehorned your way here because of Allison, you know, being in a position she's probably like, oh, you work this case, like, here you go. It's like probably because of family connections that he was able to get in on the case. I mean, we still haven't seen whether he's a good detective or not. Like, that hasn't really been determined yet, but maybe he just actually is a good detective, and it's not even just family connection. Because I don't even think that came up last episode, did it? That getting him involved in a case? I mean, no, granted, it's not because, you know, she would have probably had presented some reasons why to get him involved, because she wanted to keep everyone out of it. But essentially, he was supposed to get some DNA because they were like, you know, to make sure, like, the belt, there was some blood on it, and seeing whether or not it was Mitchell's or not. Granted, in the end, it would turn out not to be Mitchell's. I mean, we'll get to that a little bit later on, because basically Mitchell doesn't wear those type of belts. But nonetheless, going back to Mom came up with so many, like, every time something came up, like, Mom had an excuse for everything. It's like, oh, where, like, Cam, Allison, and Tess look like, oh, yo, where the bells at? It's like, oh, I got rid of the bells. I got Gunther to get rid of them, which I know how to interpret. I was like, oh, I was hoping Tess would have brought it up. She didn't actually ask Gunther whether he had actually gotten rid of them or not, but because I would have asked, I've been like, did you actually get rid of those bells for Mom? Maybe she'll ask next episode. I get the feeling maybe maybe they weren't gotten rid of. Maybe the mom either had Gunther like buried them, or she buried them herself, or she stashed them somewhere in the house. But the fact of the matter is, she's like, okay, the reason why those silver bells are in there as well as all those clippings is because your dad thought of himself as an amateur sleuth slash detective. He was just trying to work on the case, but then, you know, he had dementia, and as it got worse and worse, he started thinking like, oh, he was the killer. So basically, she got rid of it so there was no confusion, you know, because she didn't want, you know, because eventually the dad would have gone public with it, like, oh, I'm the silver bell killers. The Silver Bells Killer. I still can't say that right. I'm going to shorten it from now on. Forever it will be SBK, just so I don't have to keep doing that to myself. I literally, when I was kind of taking notes last night, I included that. I was like, make sure you just say SBK, but I completely forgot. I mean, granted, it makes sense because I don't even have my phone with me right now. That's kind of where I write my notes now. Nevertheless, moving on. She talked about, like, the fact is that he had dementia, so, you know, he was going to ruin the family, which is like, we kind of see where Allison gets it. It's just, they're so content on continuing their lifestyle that they was like, oh, it'll ruin the family. And she's like, even Tess brought it up later on because she learned from Gunther that, oh, he was still a shark because he was playing chess, but then, like, the mom was like, you don't have to be, you know, in the right mind to beat Gunther at chess, you know, that still be sharp. But, you know, Chess started seeing the inconsistencies, but then the mom was just like, at the very end of his life, he wanted me to kill him. How dare you sit up here at your father's funeral calling me a liar and making Tess feel bad about herself and making her almost like literally run away. And it's just like, oh, and then Allison asked about it. She's like, oh, it's just finally on hit. They're just like, I mean, I'm gonna put it bluntly, it's like, you bitch, like, you're such a manipulator. You're turning the narrative so that you can excuse, like, a lot of things. It's like she's hiding so freaking much because her and Allison were working together to make sure that Garrett didn't get to the funeral because Garrett wanted to say some things. Which, let's quickly go back to Allison really quickly. So much stuff about her, like, we see how much of a control freak and how, like, she likes to control every situation because she's like, I'm crying, but what about you, Tess? You haven't cried a single tear. And Cam had to be like, whoa, calm down, Allison. You are the one that manages everything. So how many tears should we shed? 5, 6, you know, what number is good for you? Because it's like, how can you say that to somebody? It's like, oh, we just lost our father. Like, people grieve in different ways, and that kind of got brought up. Granted, Tess also had to deal with the fact that she was like, plus, I need answers. I can't grieve until we get answers about these silver bells. So that was that. Plus, we kind of got, it was confirmed, the whole Naomi situation twice, because it's like, she's like, I'm so sorry, and like holding her, like touching her in a very loving way. And then her significant other, who is Dylan Bruce, the actor who played Paul from Orphan Black. I recognized that in the first episode. I just didn't say anything. I just felt like bringing it up this time. Just like, when I see him, it's like, Paul. And, you know, obviously I've mentioned this in Banshee, but I didn't bring it up in this, but Anthony Starr from Banshee, so that's cool too, you know, playing Garrett. But nonetheless, the fact is, her husband was there giving her that music box, which we heard a little bit about from Allison when she was talking at their father's funeral. And then, you know, they're kissing, and you see Naomi just staring from a distance, just full of content. It's confirmed they're having an affair. I wonder if it's one of those situations where it just happened, you know, was it just kind of like a spur of the moment type of thing, or was it just kind of like, oh, don't worry, eventually when everything's settled, you know, it, like, what I meant to say is, what I'm trying to say is she just kind of a side piece, or is it kind of a situation where it's like, no, I'll leave my husband for you, just give me time, which I feel bad for Naomi because she knows she's being just tugged along. Like, she'll never be anything more, because to Allison, she wants to keep it discreet, especially when in that position where she is, where she's like, okay, I'm going to be, was it mayor or governor, whatever the case, whatever it is she was running for. I'm pretty sure it was governor, wasn't it? Nevertheless, like, when she gets to that powerful position, she's not going to want a scandal like, oh, she's having an affair, or she left her husband to be with her campaign manager. You know, that's, you know, and that's why I'm going to feel bad for Naomi, which means that's going to come back to bite Allison's. And just because we've seen so much of Allison's personality in these first 2 episodes, I can draw that conclusion already, that that's going to happen, and Naomi's going to feel like she got screwed over, and she's going to screw Allison over somehow. I mean, granted, we'll still have to see. They're still keeping everything about SBK to themselves. You know, because she was the one, her and her mom are together on like, oh, we have to keep our mouth shut about this for father's legacy, as well as, you know, keeping our family intact, because if this gets out, it's like it's going to destroy the family name. Other things, Cam, we saw him kind of relapse, obviously at the end of the last episode, but also jonesing for like a hit, like at the funeral. He got it from one of the caterers or whatever, and he's about to take it, and his ex is there with him, but she ends up taking the drugs from him and makes it seem like she threw him away. And then basically like, no, I didn't feel anything when my father died. You need to, because no matter, like, even if you push it away now, it's going to come back to get you later on. Basically saying there's other ways to kind of push that aside, and basically saying, let's have sex. And they started getting towards it in the bathroom stall. Granted, they stopped when Jack got up there saying what he said. I'll get to him in a second. Now, I don't know how to, excuse me, I try to push faster, but excuse me. What I'm trying to infer from that situation, what we saw was her walking away smiling and with the drugs. Now, there's one or two ways that could have been. Either one, which is I think is most likely, could be the fact is that she took it from Cam, and, you know, because she wanted to be his support, because she wants to be back together with Cam. So I'm thinking she's like, oh, he'll remember that I did a good thing. I took the drugs from him. I was there for him to be his rock, both physically and emotionally be his rock, you know, during this hard time for him, rock in a hard place. That's why I stumbled a little bit, because I was thinking about that stupid joke in the back of my head. I know, I'm sorry. But basically being there for him during that time, and he'll feel indebted to her and feel like, oh, we can work on a relationship even though I'm kind of a bit of a bad influence for him. That, or she just wanted drugs for herself. Honestly, I mean, we really don't even really know her that well, only that she is kind of a bad influence, that if it weren't for everything going on in his life, Cam wouldn't gotten drawn back in with her. Maybe, maybe not. We don't really know, because he did get clean for, I think it was only like 10 months. Everyone still thinks he's clean, but obviously he's not. So, but at the end of it all, you know, I'm assuming that, I mean, it could easily be both, you know, both the drugs as well as trying to be there for him. So. And, you know, we got at the very end of the episode. Oh, let me skip back a little bit. A little more about Jack. Now, I don't know how to interpret Jack. I find it funny how twisted he is. It's just kind of like, it's kind of in a cringy way, like, oh, that kid is twisted in that type of sense. So not necessarily funny, but I find it funny that it's so cringy how bam, 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 bam about being disturbed he is. So I wonder, like, what brought that about. Just like, oh, here's dad, oh, it's been this amount of time, so grandpa's probably in rigor mortis. He's like this, and there was even a point he was taking his time going, representing kind of his dad, grandpa being in rigor mortis at the funeral, talking about, oh, like, I'll miss him, I'll never be able to hug him. Basically saying verbatim what Cam had already said to him. It's like, oh, this is what people should be. They should be sad about these type of situations, and be like, I'll never be, he's being cremated, so I'll never be able to see his decomposing body. It's like, that kid is disturbed. Which, you know, the mom suggested he needs to get therapy. Which at the end of it, I mean, when it's said and done, we ended up finding out that Cam actually kind of had a dark side. We found that out from Garrett. Which the moment Garrett brought that up, Cam kind of stared him down. But then mom also brought it up saying like, oh, you went to therapy when you were a teenager. So it's like, okay, get him into therapy because of what he did to the cat. We kind of saw that brought up. Like, I feel like, I don't know whether to interpret that's going to come back as something else later on or not. It just seems like like at the beginning I was like, okay, that's just going to be a one-off thing, isn't it? But it's like, oh, he cut off his tail. I kind of like left that out last time because I actually forgot about it. But it's like, I don't know whether that's going to come back as something else or not, or whether that's just kind of like, I don't know, I feel like it's going to be like a minor storyline that comes back in a bigger way. It's just kind of like, oh, it started off as this and then it grew into this kind of arc, you know? We also had that conversation. This is what I was about to lead to before I went back to Jack, is the conversation between Garrett and his mom. She's like, I'm glad you kept your mouth shut. He's like, I didn't do it for you. I was like, oh, then who'd you do it for? And then I was like, oh yeah, I forgot the whole like kind of test breaking down, you know, because she took anxiety pills before, but she's been waning off of them. She hasn't taken them a while because her and Brady are trying to have a baby. So I was like, oh yeah, he saw how bit of a mess she was, so he's not going to say anything. And she's like, basically, you should just leave. You're a grenade. And he's like, okay, if I'm a grenade, you better kind of handle me with care then. You better handle me very carefully. So I don't know what his big secret is, whatever it is that the mom's trying to keep secret, because it kind of keeps bouncing back. It's like, is Garrett the killer? It's like, oh, is he SBK? It's like, oh, was dad SBK? It's like, obviously your dad wasn't SBK, and I'm going to not even dignify that with a real response, like just how idiotic that is, because Cam was kind of hung up on that. And it's also because Allison also, is suspicious of Garrett too, because she's like, because I mean, let's not forget, she tried to get Garrett arrested so that he wouldn't be at the funeral, basically using her connections, because she needed to get him out of the way, because her and her mom agreed that, like, there's no telling what he's going to say at the funeral. Granted, the mom knew exactly what he's going to say, but he did it for his sister, because legitimately she is the only one he cares about. I don't know, like, him and Cam, I don't know how they really feel about each other. Obviously Cam doesn't trust him, but it also seems like him and Allison have a bit of a strained relationship too, because Allison doesn't trust him as well. But the only person that does trust him is Tess, because Tess looks at him and is like, yo, our long lost big brother, that cared for her so much when she was little. And it seems like he continues to do that now. The only reason why he didn't bring all that up is for her. I don't know if it's for the rest of the family. Like, we really don't know how he feels about the rest of the family. It seems like he doesn't care. It seems like he only cares about his baby sister. So I don't know. We did learn other things too, like the reason why him and Garrett and their father had a big falling out was because his dad wanted him to take over the business, and that's kind of one of the reasons why he left. Obviously there's more to it, because even Allison herself is saying, like, it seems like he has an agenda. It's almost like he has a vendetta against his family, like what is this all about? And the mom obviously wouldn't elaborate more. But also in this episode, we ended up finding out, I'll get to the final spin, the kind of twist at the end. I'll go ahead and say it. The fact of the matter is, we find out that the belt that they were using, because you see Brady looking through all those pictures like, oh, who he's going to see the belt on? Let me guess, like it's going to be a twist, and it's the person that has the belt is Tess or something. It's like, oh, no, the person that actually has the belt is Cam. Because we ended up finding out, basically the profile was basically that, because we ended up finding out basically about SBK's killing style from 99 to 2002. Sorry for that hard cut. That's what I get for always recording my videos near the house phone, because that has a tendency to happen. What point was I trying to make? Right. SBK, we find out a little bit more about his style. It was from 99 to 2002, killed about, was it 6 or 7 people, and it just stopped. Essentially, all his victims obviously were strangled, but specifically they were wealthy people from the town's more wealthy families, and basically would position the bodies to kind of look like dead kings upon their thrones. So basically the theory was, okay, SBK is kind of from a middle to lower class family that holds resentment towards the rich and powerful, essentially, and that's what they were kind of under the impression of. But it's like, nope, SBK, because that belt is actually pretty expensive. It's about 180 bucks, I think was what they were saying. So SBK is actually someone who is from a rich family too, so it's a rich person who has contempt towards another rich family member. And it turns out, that belt belonged to Cam. So it's because I knew he was looking through all these pictures, and I was like, oh, it's going to end up being Tess. But I was like, Tess is probably the youngest in the family. Like, that was like 2002, and Tess is like, what, 27 now? So she would have been like 13 at the time or something like that. So I mean, granted, Cam, we don't really know how old Cam is, but Cam was probably old enough to be capable of that. So he's kind of the next suspect because of it being his belt. Obviously, like I said, you can't take anything at face value, because this show is going to be riddled with red herrings. But it's going to be very interesting to see specifically Brady's dynamic. Like I said, that's, to me, finding out his connection to the family, finding out that he's Tess's husband, to me makes the whole thing, like, I like that dynamic, because it's basically him trying to investigate the SBK case while also investigating his family, while hiding the fact is that he's investigating them. And that's going to come back in a big way. I know it is, because it's going to be probably because I get the feeling what's going to happen is, this is just an early theory, that basically he's going to end up arresting someone in their family, and then Tess is going to find out, like, oh, you've been investigating my family this entire time. I loved you. How could you do this? But granted, out of anyone, Tess has her biggest reservations about the family. But granted, I guess her mom kind of squashed all those. And there's just so many questions. I'm sure everything's going to be a red herring. Obviously, there's probably going to be clues here and there to kind of point you towards who the real killer is, but it probably won't be until, it'll probably be one of those things like you get to the end of the season and you're like, and you rewatch it and you're like, oh, there's all these clues here and there. There were clues here and there that kind of point to say, oh, so-and-so was SBK the entire time. So, very interesting episode, and I kind of said I wasn't sure whether I was going to keep doing these or not, and I decided, I will. Like I said, I like murder mysteries, so I'm very interested to see where we go, continuing with this show and see where the story goes. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.